Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel for another Escape from Tarkov video. With the new patch, we have some new weapons and new ways to get a hold of some old ones much earlier than before. So in this video, I'll be taking a look at the level 2 traders and showing a few builds for new and old weapons that I've been favoring here in the first week of the wipe. To start this off, I think it's only appropriate to begin with some of the coolest new weapons added to Tarkov in quite a while, the Uzi and the Uzi Pro. In the early stages of a patch, I really love using SMGs. In the first month or so, 9mm really shines because most people don't have good armor and helmets. So you can actually score some pretty nice kills on other players with really cheap ammo that you can buy in large quantities. As a nice bonus, most of the SMGs are cheaper than rifles, and they're universally lighter than rifle loadouts, meaning that you have a lot more wiggle room when it comes to weight, so you can pick up more loot and move around the map faster. The Uzi is also just kind of a classic weapon. Though I think in the modern era, video games really don't give it as much screen time as it deserves. The fire rate is pretty low, but in a way, that just makes it easier to shoot. In Tarkov, you actually have quite a lot of options for the Uzi at level 1 and level 2 traders. One of the best pickups that you can make is to trade the new blue wrench item for a suppressed Uzi at level 1 mechanic, giving you access to a suppressed SMG that you can do some modding to as well. After making this barter trade, I like to just toss on the Uzi FG handguard, which comes with a built-in foregrip that boosts the stats a little bit. Next, I add on the Uzi rail onto the handguard, which gives you a space to mount a tactical device like the Balder Pro flashlight and laser. You can also put a sight onto the Uzi right at level 1. You can get the Uzi Stormworks sight rail, and then you can put most small red dot sights onto this so you don't have to use the iron sights, which aren't really that great. At level 2 Peacekeeper, you can also get another version of the Uzi Pro pistol variant. I really like this one because it basically juices up the Uzi fire rate to almost 1100 RPM, similar to the MP9 or the Vector. To kit this one out, first I like to add on the Uzi Pro SBR stock to help control the recoil. Then you can also add on a foregrip or a flashlight onto the front rail. This version of the Uzi comes with a sight rail, so you can add on a red dot sight to help with aiming. If you want to take this a step farther, you can swap out the barrel with the Uzi Pike Arms threaded barrel, which then allows you to attach suppressors. For this build, I just went with the SRD9 from Peacekeeper level 2, but the Rotor 9x19 suppressor is also usually pretty cheap on the market, and I would also look for the SRD9 on the market because sometimes it's quite cheap. You can also add on the Uzi Pro M-Lock handrail as well, which does boost the stats a little bit, and it lets you mount some other tactical devices onto the front rail. Personally, I think this little bullet hose can probably rival the MP9N as one of my favorite budget builds for the early game, and I'm excited to level up and access the other versions of the Uzi Pro at level 3 traders, especially the barter trade at level 3 Peacekeeper. The next build I want to talk about at level 2 traders is actually a pretty awesome addition to the early game in my opinion. The VSK94 was actually added in the 12.14 patch, but it was all the way up at level 4 proper, which meant that by the time you could get it, it was kind of pointless since there was much better things that you could use. In the 0.15 patch though, this rifle is available for purchase at level 2 proper with a suppressor on it for 54,000 rubles. That's kind of an insane value considering even an AKS-74UB with the suppressor is 70k. On top of that, you can get the 20 round 9x39 mags at level 1 proper, and you can get the SP5 ammo from proper at level 2, meaning you have everything you need to run the VSK and some fairly decent ammo for it as soon as you hit level 15. This rifle does have some drawbacks, being stuck with a 20 round mag and being kind of stuck to close or medium range because of the ammo type, but it gets you ammo that can take down armored PMCs pretty early, which is a big bonus. My VSK build is pretty simple, but I like it quite a bit. First, I grabbed the Cobra Dovetail sight mount, which has space for a sight and a side rail for a tactical device. For my sight, I like to use the Delta Point Reflex sight, but you can swap this for whatever you prefer. The tactical device on the side rail of this mount is kind of awkwardly placed, but this is the only way to get a light or a laser onto this thing at level 2 traders without using the flea market, so honestly it's a pretty good compromise. I usually take the Balder Pro Olight or the TBL blue laser for this spot just to keep it simple and cheap. And with that, you have a pretty solid little 9x39 build at level 2 traders for under 100k rubles, which I think is pretty awesome, and it adds some much needed variety to what we can make at level 2 traders instead of basically just being stuck with either an AK, an ADAR, or a 9mm gun. Next up, I want to take a look at the triumphant return of one of my favorite early to mid-game builds, an ADAR that you can convert into a full auto M4A1 as soon as you hit mechanic level 2. The beauty of this one is that the build works just fine as an ADAR as a semi-auto build, but if you have mechanic level 2, it's really cheap to turn it full auto, so there's really no reason not to. All you need to do is buy the single slot M4A1 item from mechanic. This is a lower receiver, and you can transfer all of the items from the ADAR build onto this thing and it converts it into an M4, and then you've got full auto. To start this build off, I head over to the flea market to get a cheap ADAR, usually around 20 to 25,000 rubles, and they usually have pretty good durability. First up, I swap out the gas block for the MK12 gas block, and then I swap out the buffer tube for the RTM ATP buffer tube at skier level 2. Next, I just add on the Colt A2 pistol grip, which replaces the ADAR wooden stock. For the muzzle device on this build, my preference is to use the KAC QDC flash hider, which can then add on the KAC NT4 suppressor, which is usually only 25 to 30,000 rubles on the market. For the handguard, skier level 2 sells the MOE SL mid-length handguard, which gives you a huge ergonomics boost and space to mount some rails. For my foregrip, I'm using the DD M-Lock foregrip, and then I add on an M-Lock rail to put on a flashlight as well. Finally, I add on the Chris DS150 stock for some nice extra stats at a very reasonable price. And then you just need to pick an optic. Personally, I really like spending the money to get something like an Elcan Spectre 1-4 scope on the flea market, but you can use pretty much whatever you have access to, even just a red dot sight is fine. Another good budget choice is the Hammer scope with a delta point reflex sight mounted on top as a backup for close range. You can get the Hammer scope for usually pretty cheap on the market, and then you have a 3.5 times scope and a red dot. Personally, I think this is one of the best 5.56 guns that you can set up early on, though I do plan on doing sort of a comparison between the AUG, the G36, and the M4 to see which is really the best for the money spent in the early game. And really, I think that covers it for the weapons that I'm most excited for at level 2 traders. There's a lot of other options available, but for this video, I just kind of wanted to ease back into making Tarkov content by taking a look at some new builds that you can make for the early game, and of course, the return of my favorite early game M4 build. Next up, I think I want to make a little collection of early to mid-game AK builds for different calibers, and 5.56 builds and 7.62 builds as well. But let me know down in the comments what kind of stuff you're hoping to see covered for the 0.15 patch. Thanks for checking out the video, and I really appreciate everyone who's returning to the channel after my hiatus from Tarkov. I'm back to streaming the game on Twitch as well, so I'll have a link for that in my description. Thanks again, and until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City, everyone.